What do you see when you imagine the future? When we picture what's to come, we often think of innovations that take us to new heights. Some of them are already here, and every day, thousands more make the jump from our imagination into reality. Nowhere is this more evident than here in Japan. Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies are fundamentally transforming the way we do things. All this is happening so fast, and we must do more than just keep up. These emerging technologies open up boundless possibilities of what our future could look like. Technology is not a simple solution to our problems. It poses questions that we need to answer and guidelines we need to write together. That's why we're all here. A global event hosted by Japan that brings together the world's leading voices across disciplines and geographies. How technology will shape our tomorrow depends on the choices we make today. And that starts now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are watching. Welcome to this session, Harnessing Data for a Healthy Ocean, part of the World Economic Forum's Global Technology Summit 2021. My name is Dominic Warre. I'm a Managing Director at the World Economic Forum, and I'm based over here in Geneva. And I'm delighted to be your moderator for a 30-minute panel discussion, which will be followed by then a private dialogue exclusively for those of you joining us on TopLink. The discussion is linked to our Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution on the Ocean, located in Norway, led by CEO Bjørn Tore Markussen, who will lead the dialogue on TopLink after this panel discussion. Now, this year marks the start of the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. The decade will advance the critical role of ocean science to support not only a sustainable ocean, but also our health, well-being, and livelihoods that we draw from the ocean. As part of this momentum, the Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution on the Ocean is leading efforts to harness data for a healthy ocean through the Centre's Ocean Data Platform and the Ocean Data Action Coalition, in close collaboration with the World Economic Forum's Friend of Ocean Action platform. The aim of this extraordinary coalition is to implement the priority actions which were agreed by something called the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy. This high-level panel was chaired by the Prime Minister of Norway and involved 14 heads of state and government from around the world. And one of their key recommendations was to create a globally shared data revolution that contributes to sustainable ocean management worldwide. And with the cost of data collection technology falling so dramatically, this data revolution is coming fast. However, engaging the private sector and industry still remains a real challenge. How can we unlock the mountains of useful data that companies have on the ocean to augment the publicly available scientific data we've already amassed about the ocean? What innovative incentives and measures can we create to help minimize risks and maximize the public-private data sharing we so need to advance the greater public good? Further, how do we ensure that these efforts are not about collecting loads of data for the sake of simply having lots of data, but what kinds of practical data about the ocean are we currently missing? What data on the ocean do we urgently need, and in what form? With the right kind of information packaged in the right way, ocean science can then be applied to improve decision-making, management, policy planning, and innovation for a sustainable ocean. So, as well as finding ways to access data across the public and private domain, we must also figure out what information we actually need so we can harness this data for more than academic research alone. The data we collect and leverage must be rapidly put to work through informing actions and stimulating new innovations to help improve the health and sustainable development of the ocean. From tracking plastics and emissions to responsible management of ocean resources and international cooperation on policies and protection, we need to ask these questions of both the public and private sector. What will it take to unlock the practical value of our ocean data? What data do we need? and how can we best use it to help solve the most pressing challenges the ocean faces? So that's the challenge facing us in the next half an hour. And joining us today to try and answer these questions, I'm delighted to say we've got a fabulous lineup. We have Maria Inês Gameiro, who's advisor to the Office of the Minister of the Sea of Portugal and Sherpa to the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean. And she has been working very much on these data questions. Mats Johansson, the CEO of Aker Biomarine, part of the Aker Group, who are kind of leading the C4IR Ocean Centre of the World Economic Forum, and Will Marshall, the CEO of Planet Labs, who are very much engaged in satellite Earth observation. So let us get straight to it. And Maria Inês Gameiro, if I can start with you first. From your work supporting the high-level panel on ocean science and knowledge, in your opinion, what does this data revolution for sustainable ocean management look like? And what will it take to drive it forward? Over to you, Maria.
Hello, good morning, good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for inviting me to this session on such a very, very important topic. From the perspective of the Ocean Panel, which is pretty much aligned with the perspective of the Portuguese government and the other members of the panel, evidently, the importance of supporting ocean science and technology, I would say, is the pretty much critical and pivotal point for the next years. And that has been recognized precisely by the United Nations when they launched the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. The need for a much better knowledge of the ocean, now that I think we are pretty much well aware of the complexities of this system. So the Ocean Panel, which is very much action-driven, has set forward a series of priority actions in this regard, trying to unlock the potential of ocean knowledge and ocean science, and the importance of making ocean knowledge and science available to everyone. So our priorities go from building ocean literacy, which is a very, very critical point, and ocean awareness among citizens, because that is also a part of ocean knowledge, but also to the spectrum of investing in technology and skills for ocean conservation and management, and the sustainable ocean industries. And one specific point that you mentioned, which is the fact that we have a vast knowledge in certain areas of the ocean, and in some of them we know pretty much nothing. And some of the knowledge is locked in certain players. So the importance of increasing cooperation and capacity building and a proper transfer of technology, not only between countries, but between also the public and the private sector and the different stakeholders, is also a priority action and something that is very, very important. Looking more, I don't know if I have still 2 minutes to go on this, but looking at the specific point that you are making about how to transfer this data revolution to how to make this data revolution have a real impact and go beyond words and beyond what we are in the political realm trying to proceed. We do know that there is a data and technology explosion going on, and in fact the panel has among its wide amount of scientific reports, has published a specific report on these issues, on data and technology related to marine resources. And in that report, some very concrete solutions are addressed to deal with this this explosion that we are living, and among them are the idea of go deep into the latest innovations and technology, including, well, the following speakers will have a pretty much wider sense of this that I'm saying, but including satellites, including autonomous vehicles, including artificial intelligence, including so many things that are available to us right now for data collection and research, and really applying them to the ocean. And again, I go back to the need for cooperation and coordination when doing this. And we need a better effort at coordinating the industry, the governments, the researchers, so that we can advance in the same direction. And I think that at this point, we know already the status quo, which is that a lot of the amount of data that we have is not organized and not structured, and that is, I would say, if I want to resume in two sentences the way to go forward, I would say that on one side it is the importance of structuring all the knowledge that we have and cooperating with all the knowledge that we have, and in another way to have an assessment of what we lack, and then to have a solid coordinated effort to go forward.
Maria, thank you very much. It's very interesting that there's this group of government leaders and advisors like yourself really zeroed in on the importance of ocean data, what we know, what we don't know, the importance of the governmental and public sector information gathering, but also of the private sector. Portugal has the presidency of the EU coming up. So in your opinion, what role do governmental bodies such as the EU have to play to help with that coordination and structuring that you're talking about? And how do you envisage engaging with the private sector, considering our next two speakers are from the private sector? They might be interested to hear. Thank you, Maria. Over to you.
Thank you. Yes, this semester, Portugal is holding the presidency of the Council of the European Union. And I think we are pretty much well aware that when we deal with the oceans, more than in some other areas, the national level and government bodies are very important, but they do need to work together with international and regional bodies. And the European Union is obviously a very important actor at the regional stage, and I would say international stage as well. So during our presidency, we are advancing precisely with the area of sustainable blue economy, linked with the European integrated maritime policy, and on a proposal to have a sustainable blue economy based on 4 pillars, one of them being exactly knowledge and awareness for a better management of oceans and seas. And through this idea and this policy that we are trying to put forward, we really want to reinforce the importance of some key factors. One of them is the relevance of research and innovation and open data to better understand and protect the oceans, including through some European programs like the Horizon Europe and Mission Ocean, Seas and Waters. So there are specific programs being developed in this way. Also at the level of getting more data and more knowledge, we are reiterating the role of the European Earth Observation Program, so Copernicus, called Copernicus, and the European Marine Observation and Data Network. Those are important initiatives, among other ones, that we want to foster and develop in order to have a better knowledge of the ocean. Obviously, this is all very much linked to the UN Decade of Ocean Science. But we are also looking at the private sector. And we are also looking at the fact that this transition has to be made holding hands with the private sector.
Maria, let us move on to the private sector then to hear how they might hold hands to you. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but we only have half an hour. And you've made so many interesting comments there that I want to kind of bring in our two other panelists to react, if I may. Mats Johansson, you are the CEO of Aker Biomarine, and you work closely with technology all the time, including the C4IR Ocean Center. I think it'd be interesting for some of our viewers here to understand the ways that Aker Biomarine harness data for the ocean. And from what we've just heard from the Portuguese representative, how can more businesses like you engage with governments to share their data, and what do you think is stopping more businesses sharing data like you do and the way that you work? Mats, over to you, sir.
Thank you. So first of all, we are a krill harvesting company that's dedicated to improving human and planetary health. So krill is one of the biggest biomasses on the planet, twice the size of the human biomass. It's an untapped resource full of nutrients that's important for human health, like omega-3s, where most populations are deficient, and like a new discovered molecule we found in krill called LPC that potentially is the cure to Alzheimer. And Aker Biomarine, we are catching about 70% of all the krill that's being caught globally. And that puts us in this unique position that we can really influence the way the industry and our industry is developing, because those things that we implement becomes the standard for the industry. So we set our objective when we incepted the company some 14, 15 years ago, that we were going to build the gold standard for sustainable fisheries. And already today, the krill fishing is rated as the most sustainable fishery in the world. But we do not stop there. So the most exciting project that we're working on right now is a project that we have together with C4IR. And what we do there is that we have developed drones that collect data in Antarctica, where we fish krill. We have implemented technology on board our fishing vessels that gives both data on the biomass, the ecosystem around, the waters, the temperatures, massive amounts of data that's processed in the database of C4IR, with the objective to create what we call a feedback management system. And what a feedback management system is basically a real-time quota setting for a fishery. Because what is a challenge today with fisheries is that you're basing the decision on historical data. And as we see with the rapid change now in temperatures in the water and global warming and so on, it can be dangerous to base decision on all data. So by collecting this data and sharing this data openly, we are now going to be able to make decisions on quotas based on what the biomass and the ecosystem looks like right now. And as an industry leader, we are now making those investments in that technology, in the cooperation with C4I, to get the data in place. And hopefully we'll get it implemented as a regulatory kind of demand for the fisheries as well, and then become inspiration for all the other fisheries out there in terms of how you can actually do it.
That's so interesting what you just said, and just relating it to the previous speaker, if I may, before you carry on. What obstacles do you see about a company like yourself collecting so much real-time information on krill and interacting with governments and policymakers, like we just heard from Maria, who are hoping that this data can be used for governance? Is that an easy thing to do, or is the conversation a very difficult one because you talk at cross purposes, or what do you see about that?
No, I think just that crossroad is quite easy because we are kind of fighting for the same cause with the governments that want kind of a better regulation as well. So that part is not challenging. But I mean, for us as a business, there are and has been kind of tough decisions that we have to make because let's say this data that we collect, that's our gold. I mean, this is our competitive advantage, you know, with information that can help our competitors to do better, right? So by sharing this data and making it available for everybody, we're also sharing all our trade secrets to our competitors. But that's something that we are willing to do. And I think it's possible for us to do because we are still kind of the leading player in there. So if kind of regulation becomes better, we're going to benefit for that as well. So, and I also like to mention one more thing, which is maybe a little bit more controversial, but I think most of us have seen the latest Netflix movie called Seaspiracy. And it shows you how dangerous it is when data is misused or manipulated and presented in a non-favorable way. So that's the other concern we have of putting all our data out there, is that if someone has bad intentions, you can pick this data apart and you can present it in many different ways. But we're willing to take that risk to make sure that we can develop the fishery in a positive way.
Mats, thank you so much, and thanks for that extra series of thoughts. If we have time, I'd love to get back to you on what you thought was a misrepresentation in that Netflix program, but let's hold that thought for now, because you said a really important couple of comments there, that you have the technology, you are yielding loads of data information, very much in line with what Maria was hoping for in terms of better seascape management. But on the one hand, it's your competitive advantage. So what rules of the game can be put in place to help everyone, if everyone puts their information there? And secondly, in terms of all of that information, how is it that we make sure that people don't misuse it for whatever reasons? These are pretty tricky questions, I think, Maria. Will, you've been looking at these things, I know, in various shapes and forms at Planet Labs. You are the CEO of Planet Labs, a leader in satellite Earth observation, and you take billions of observation every day, and you use technologies to capture things, microsatellites. As I think viewers would be interested in the wealth of data that you're generating, but maybe inspired by what we've just heard. What would be some of your reactions to these problems of how we can enable companies to share data for the global public good in a way that advances everyone's cause, rather than feeling that they're opening up too much? And how do we kind of deal with people misusing data or misunderstanding it, which are, for the ocean, I'm sure, very real concerns? I'm sure you have other questions as well that you've addressed on these topics, but Will, over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, Dominic, and it's a pleasure to be speaking here on ocean health and how we can use data to advance it. We at Planet have 200 satellites that image the whole Earth every single day, all the landmass and nearby coastal waters, and a bunch of the oceans as well. And what's that got to do with this? Because it's that you can't fix what you can't see. So satellites have a unique advantage of wide-scale monitoring. And just to give you a couple of examples, tracking overfishing in waters. Just in fact, last year, Global Fishing Watch used our data to monitor dark fleets, and this caused, seeing huge amounts of illegal fishing off Russian and Korean peninsula waters that has now been curbed because of the data. We also did a map of the coral reefs and identified if there were ocean bleaching events or illegal fishing vessels in those coral areas. Look, I mean, I think there's wonderful potential here. When the high-level panel on ocean sustainability did their recommendations, one of the top ones is, of course, having marine protected areas, having sustainable fisheries. And the first thing you need for that, to implement that, is, of course, data that underpins that. So the availability in advance now of large fleets of satellites like our own that enable us to scan much more regularly, not just on an infrequent basis to understand how we are doing, but on a regular basis to actually take action, really gives hope, I think. Your question about how do we balance between business interests and if you like, societal or public good ones, I think is a really important one. We did a project last year with Norway where they helped to pay for our data to protect deforestation in the tropical belt of 64 tropical countries. This project on corals I mentioned, and some of that data was pushed out as a public good through that sponsorship through Norway. Similarly, on our coral project, some of that was paid by foundations, and then some of the data is pushed out as a public good on the Allen Coral Atlas, and you can go online and see it. I think the equivalent needs to be happening here. If we want to protect marine protected areas, if we want to protect mangroves, which is another super important area, an ecosystem we need to protect, well, help pay for the data and get it out there. What the governments can do is help pay for it, right? That enables the businesses to share that data. They obviously, in our case, we launched lots of satellites. It costs a serious money to do that. And so I think the quick answer is pay for it.
Well, that's pretty interesting, and I like the analog with the forest space that you were saying, and maybe there's a model there. Just to come back at you, some people might be listening saying, hang on a minute, this is our information anyway, why should the public purse pay for it? Why can't companies like yourself pay for it?
Well, I mean, it is our business model to sell imagery. We sell it to agricultural companies to improve their precision agriculture. We sell it to companies like Google to improve their satellite maps that you see online. Obviously, we can't break that. Our colleague here, Maria, mentioned the European Copernicus fleet of satellites. Those are a hugely important set of satellites that benchmark, and it is a public good. The data is immediately made free and available. But of course, it's not free. Taxpayers have paid billions and billions of dollars, or euros in this case, for those imagery. And the private sector is now supplementing that with data that really helps. It's a 1 + 1 = 3 situation where the Sentinel data and other private data makes it even more possible to do things than either data set alone. But of course, that hasn't been paid for by the taxpayers. And so I think it is a different situation where just like Norway leant forward to help monitor tropical forests, we need to lean forward to harness this data and where necessary, push it as a public good to help, so we should pick the data sets that are worthy of public good and make them that. But of course, that takes paying for it where they come originally from the private sector.
Well, that's enormously helpful, and it reminds us of how the sprint to develop vaccines for the COVID pandemic in a year was very much a public-private partnership. There are models and innovations that require investment in both to create that public good outcome. And your point there about pinpointing the exact data that we really do need or that is missing. I think, Maria, you said at the beginning there are some white spaces, some gaps that one can sort of start to mold this public-private effort. We've got a few minutes before we move to the more closed session. So I'd just like to come back to you all. There's a wealth of information that you've kind of put on the table for us to kind of work through. But Maria, if there was one thing from your side about how we might navigate through, this is quite a complicated space, but what is your sort of one message to those who are listening about where the work of the panel, the work of Portugal will go next? To help us access all of this incredible information that technology now has at our disposal for the public good. What's the next step from Portugal, from your side, from the presidency that you have of the European Union? What can we be looking out for that you'll be doing next on this important topic?
I have a very optimistic view. I think that at this point, we are already aware that we need the knowledge, that we need to cooperate to get it, that we need both the public and the private sector, that we need to engage everyone. And until a few years ago, that wasn't the case. We need to, when I say engage everyone, I mean everyone. We are at the presidency also very much aware of the fact that we need to engage women as equals in the maritime sector. So I think that right now we know that we need the finance instruments, we need the capital, we need the governments, the regulation, we need everyone to move forward. And although this may seem simple, I think just this broader union is a very, very important thing that until a few years ago wasn't exactly like this. So I think right now the only thing to do is to get our details straight, and we'll get there.
Fantastic, Mira. That is a positive message and teases up nicely for the discussion that we're going to have following this and with the C4AR Centre. Mats, what would be your kind of one reflection or thought about how to move forward on this quite complicated agenda for those who are listening?
Yeah, I think one of the bigger challenges is kind of how to actually use the data. So one thing is to collect the data and get it into a big database, but I think generally for big data projects, it's actually to get the users of the data involved at an early stage, so we make sure that we actually build models and collect data that we can actually use to something useful. So yeah, that's my closing remarks.
That's fantastic. And well, from your perspective, that was a very optimistic message from Maria. So it sounds like we're in a very different space to perhaps even 4 or 5 years ago. What would you see as the important next step?
Yeah, I completely agree with Maria's optimism. I mean, we're just on the verge. I mean, humanity has hurt a lot of the oceans, and that hurts ourselves, right? Because our interests are intrinsically tied up in the oceans. But the tide is turning, and we now have the tools to know where we're overfishing, to know where there's sensitive ecosystems and biodiversity, like in coral reefs and mangroves and coastal wetlands and things, and so we can so we have the tools at our disposal to monitor them. I mean, I think our job now is to, as quickly as possible, harness those tools. I mean, I was, the silver lining of coronavirus in a way is that we saw how quickly humanity can change behavior if we choose to. So there are some simple things that we can do today, individual humans, in terms of changing their diet and other patterns. And there's things that governments can do and companies that can do that could rapidly change how quickly we protect our oceans. I love the ambition of the high-level panel to protect 30% of the exclusive economic zone waters and so on. And that can happen very quickly. We can change our behavior fast, and we need to, if we want to avoid destroying more of the ecosystems and the human benefit as well.
Will Marshall, CEO of Planet Labs, thank you very much, and thank you all for the panel. That concludes our rather rapid tour de force on the need and the potential for data to better and more sustainably manage our ocean. We can do it. We've got a increasingly interesting kind of confluence between the public and the private who want to do it. There are models from other areas about how it can work. We know we need to involve the users in a very inclusive way, as was mentioned, but the tools are at our disposal. Bjorn Tor Markussen, you are the CEO of the Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution for the Ocean in Norway. You've taken on the rather heroic task of pushing this agenda forward through ocean databases and such. BT, as you're known to your friends, and I hope I count as one of them. The baton is being handed over to you for those who are going to join a private discussion to play out and explore some of those themes more fully. So thank you for watching if you joined us on the live stream. For those who joined via Top Link, please remain on for about a few minutes as you get switched to a private dialogue. There'll be about a 60-second transition, so just stay on the line. And for those of you who are watching this, we hope you enjoyed the session and very much look forward to your further engagement at Global Technology Summit. Thank you very much, panelists, and thank you from here in Geneva.